Hey, thanks for joining the show.
No worries. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Bit of a weird feel this morning.
Yeah, I mean, everything that happened last night, it definitely made me feel a lot more on edge and like did make me quite upset.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think the whole of Sydney is going to be in a very dark place for this whole week at least.
Yeah, I mean, so we're in Parramatta and you can feel the tension.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like the tension's coming from kind of no one knows who to blame or if or they feel blamed, if you're part of that same group of ideology, it's not a racist thing, I don't think. We've got a war overseas that's bleeding its way into Australia. But then these events happen and it makes us realize how weird things have gotten.
Yeah,
We've never been so blended, right? I mean, if you go back not that long ago, I'm not sure about you, but my family only came here 40 years ago. Like it's pretty
yeah,
new that we're all this melting pot. But of course, when crazy stuff's happening overseas, I think Australia does a good job of letting in good people. You hear a lot, obviously, at the moment about migration or mass migration. We need migration. I think everyone knows that.
yeah,
The question's usually around how we're doing it. Um, but you've got to determine mass as well. What is a mass migration versus a normal migration? There's no answer.
yeah,
So, but
absolutely.
this is what comes from it. But I felt this morning there was definitely a weird, kind of something in the air.
Yeah, like even just walking around the streets here, like everybody just sort of had their head down, like they were
Yeah.
just not in a good place.
I think as well, like, I mean, I only took a brief walk through Parramatta, but huge amount of Muslims and Middle Eastern people here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd hate to know how they feel
Mm,
amongst, obviously, I mean, Jewish people are going to feel horrible, but to be frank, you can point a Arabic person out of the crowd a lot easier than you can a Jewish person.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
I think part of the saving grace could be this guy who disarmed one of the shooters and grabbed his gun off him,
mm-hmm.
being a Muslim guy from the Shire. I guess it shows that we are, if you're an Australian and you're part of our culture, we're in this together regardless of where you came from. But I
Yeah,
could imagine walking around, especially as a Muslim male or an Arabic male today,
yeah,
in your typical look with a beard and a shaved head. Maybe
yeah.
I'm going to get looked at funny as well, even though I'm Greek.
I couldn't imagine how they're
It'd
feeling.
be
Yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
You'd feel targeted even though you're not part of it. You got nothing to do with it.
yeah, absolutely.
And I really hope, we're seeing the Prime Minister and government call for this already, but I really hope we don't see, they were kind of saying, oh, there could be a retaliation, but I don't see that. I don't see a retaliation coming from this. I think everyone
Mm,
understands why it happened and that it's not part of our, there isn't a million people in the Western suburbs that agree with this guy. He was a
yeah,
lone actor. We were talking a bit off air about the gun stuff, and obviously as somebody who's not really probably been in a world with firearms very much, you were saying, how the hell
not
do
at
they get
all.
these guns?
Yeah,
And I was telling you that, the politics in Australia have done a really good job of convincing people we have these wildly strict gun laws.
yeah. I thought
Yeah.
we had really strict gun laws. I
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah. So we don't, but they're as strict as they could be. I mean, the
Mm,
restrictions are you've got to be of age. You can get a junior shooter license, but you've got to have a parent or whatever with a license.
yeah, right.
But you just don't have to, you can't have a criminal record. It's really the only criteria. But most people don't have a criminal record until they're a criminal.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really
So
work.
that's it. And in
Yeah.
America, you,
Same.
yeah, the exact
18,
same.
or you can get it younger as well with the right permission. The real difference is the type of firearm. So the argument in
Mm,
Australia is there's no semi-automatic rifles because they can shoot bullets faster. But I mean, we saw yesterday, I think anybody watching that footage assumed straight away, oh my God, it's a semi-automatic rifle. How did they get that? And it's like,
yeah,
that was a fully legal compliant firearm in Australia, what they were using yesterday. The news
that's
just come out this
crazy.
morning. They had 6 guns that he was the father of the 2, which is even crazier that they were father and son. The father of the 2 has had his license legally for 10 years,
Oh, wow.
and he's got 6 registered guns. He took all 6 with him to Bondi yesterday with his son. And I hope what it shows is the answer is not strict to gun laws because bad people get guns no matter what you do. I also
Mm-hmm.
don't think the answer is give everyone a gun. America's tried that. It didn't work. I think we've probably already hit the sweet spot. And then it's times like this where we go, that sucks, but
Yeah,
gun law is probably not the right thing to do about it. We saw it with the machete bins recently as well.
yeah.
I wonder,
Do you think more security?
yeah, well, you can try and protect people, but then is it a culture problem as well? Are we starting to see a slippery slope of that in Australia? I'm sure in the inquiry, maybe you know more about this being in your field, but I'm sure they bring in psychologists and people to, I mean, the guy who survived, he's alive. I'm sure he's going to be interrogated, not just by police, but to try and
Mm.
understand from a psychological point of view what got him to that.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I can't say that I know too much about that area, but there's a lot of psychologists with a lot of good knowledge,
Mm.
and I'm sure they'll share that like in the next couple of days.
Yeah,
So
they'd be
that,
working with police,
yeah,
I
like
guess, every time.
I think it's the kind of area where you need an expert in that
Mm.
field because it is so complicated. There's so much to it.
Mm.
But I think the thing that scares me the most is my idea of Australia. It used to be that we were such a safe country. And in the past couple of years, it definitely does not feel that way.
Mm.
Like I was saying to you, my friend, she just moved to Dubai for the safety of her kids. And something like this just happens a couple of days later. And she's like, yeah, I'm glad that I'm not in Australia.
I wonder sometimes if other countries do a better job of sweeping it under the rug or,
Yeah.
because I'm sure everywhere in the world has crime. The question is how publicized it gets. Something
Yeah.
happens in Australia, it hits the media straight away.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so it's hard to really know. I mean, what's safe? The people who went to the beach yesterday would have been safe
Mm.
every other day.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the Lint Cafe siege was probably the first eye opener that we had in Australia. I remember when that happened,
Yeah.
we just hadn't had something like that. We had the Port Arthur shootings back in the day, which started our gun laws being more strict. That was definitely a kind of one-off, but which had this reaction of restricting the gun laws, which worked. I think they had a massive buyback.
Yeah.
They recently tried to do it with the machetes. That's not working. I saw a photo the other day of them taking all the bins away now.
Yeah. I didn't really understand the bins.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, who's
Well,
handing in machetes?
if you've got
Yeah.
one, I don't think you're planning to hand it in.
Yeah. And this is where I say it could be a culture problem because I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a detective in Melbourne and we were saying, it's when they're pulling over these kids on the street for a random stop and they search their car and they find machetes and they ask them, what are you doing? They say, well, everyone else has got them. So if we don't, we're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And it's a very dangerous way of thinking, right? Because you can apply that metric to anything. Same with these guys with guns. You see it in the comments already, everyone saying, oh, give us permits to carry. That's not going to fix anything.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to hear what the experts say this week.
Mm. Yeah, it's going to be a very long investigation.
Mm.
But I guess something's got to be learned from it because it's bloody scary.
Absolutely. So
news.
they've got them detained? Like,
One of them, yeah. So the father was shot dead
yeah.
at the scene. And then his son was also shot. He's in hospital
Okay.
under police watch. And I'm assuming they're waiting for him to recover enough to start the investigation. But they've already raided their houses and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of the comments you see, people saying, how could somebody possibly do this? And I think if you look at it, if you put yourself in their shoes, they don't think they're crazy and wild. They think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
They've convinced themselves.
100%. They
I'm
think
doing
what
this for
they're
a
doing
reason.
is the right thing. Yeah.
It's the same reason people go to war. We look at wars and decide who the bad side was years later. But at the time, the people on the bad side thought they were on the right side.
Yeah, 100%.
So moving on to psychology, tell me about how you got into it. Was that one of those things you left school and just went, I'm going to do this?
Well, it was interesting because the first book that I ever really, really enjoyed, I was 13 years old and my auntie, she gave me this book called Personality Plus.
Mm-hmm. Still a fantastic book.
And it went through all like the main personality profiles. And I just found it was the most insightful, interesting thing that I'd ever read. So it sort of got me into reading. And then after that, like I did forget about it for a while. I was just in high school, focusing on friends, having fun, doing my thing. And when I finished high school, I had no idea what I was doing. I actually really, really lacked direction. And I think that lack of direction did cause some anxiety, some depression. Like I went through a really, really low phase right after school. And then a couple years after, I think it was about 2 years after, my auntie, again, she was an influence in my life. And she said, Bron, you're really, really smart. Like, what are you doing? And I just remember being like, oh, gosh, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. So she got me on the phone and she said, look, come up to the farm, because she was living in Queensland. I was Sydney. She said, come up to the farm and we'll sort it out. And I was like, okay, all right, we'll figure out what I'm doing. So I went up to the farm and she had this test for me called the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator. And I did the personality profile and I got the personality ENTJ. And it basically gives you a whole list of all these careers that would really suit your personality. And I looked at the list and there was psychology, and I went, okay, I've had a bit of an interest in this. So I went, okay, yep, I'll do psychology. And by this age, I was 20. So I applied to go to university as a mature age student, 21. And as soon as I started, I just felt like everything that I was learning, I just got it. Like it just made sense to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, I just sort of stuck with it, and I found that I was always, always interested in it. So I never really lost that interest. Um, and yeah, even though it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, like going to uni, supporting myself, learning statistics, those maths questions, I just still almost have no idea what I was doing. But yeah, I just really, really stuck with it.
I think, yeah, so I've got three brothers all around that early. One of them's in uni, or two of them are in uni, one of them's coming into uni.
Yeah.
And to see all of them kind of go through that, it's tough, you know, because some people know straight away, like, this is
Yeah.
what I want to be. And that might change as well, and that's fine. But some people, and I wasn't one of them, so it's hard for me to put myself in those shoes, but it must be really tough to go, shit, I'm
Yeah.
the age I'm meant to know what I'm doing, and I don't.
Or at least have some sort of direction. And I feel like, my parents were really laid back. They were like, oh, do whatever you want. But I think what I needed was that push and that guidance, like my auntie helped me with. And I think a lot of other kids need that. Like they just need something to get them going. And once they have a bit of momentum or they've tried a few different things, then they can just be on some sort of path at least. And if it doesn't work out, they try something else. But I think that period of time where you're just like sitting there not knowing, not doing anything, it's a really, really terrifying place to be.
Is that part of a uni onboarding at all? Do they do any kind of personality test to try and indicate you in a
They
direction? Or
should.
I've always thought they should.
should,
Yeah.
but they do absolutely nothing, and they do hardly any like practical sort of experience. So you could finish the whole degree and then turn out that you don't like it at all. So I think that's one of the things that the university should really try and do, like earlier in the studies. They should try and get you to experience what the job might feel like.
Mm. Yeah, my mum's big on personality tests and things like that. It's always been part of her career in hiring people as well.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot in my business where we talk about love languages too, because I think it's important to understand how people want to, I guess, be rewarded or understood.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's so undervalued. We're really not that different. There are only a few categories most of us fit in.
Yeah.
And I think we like to believe that, I could do anything I wanted if I put my mind to it. But it's like you could, but you probably wouldn't be best at it or enjoy it
Yeah.
forever.
And you might be like, like I was saying about that authenticity part, is that you could do something for 6 months that's not really you. And sure, you could like do kind of well, but it's not going to last like the lifetime. Whereas because what I found suits my personality profile, I could do it till the day that I die and I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be happy with that.
Yeah, it's funny. So my youngest brother wants to be a builder. And it's like, why do you want to be a builder? And he's like, I hate school and I want to make good money.
Yeah.
And it's like, that might work
Nothing
for a
wrong with
little
that.
bit. Yeah, but it might also be like, you don't know which way that's going to go. Because when you finally make a little bit of money, you might go, geez, I hate doing this.
Well, some people, they really need to learn from doing things. Like they will not learn from watching somebody else. They'll not learn from a mentor. They have to make the mistakes themselves. So as long as they've made some kind of decision and they're like, all right, I'm going to get started, I'm going to do this, they're going to learn along the way.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
how long ago did you go through uni?
So I started at 21. I'm 33 now, and it took 6 years before I was fully qualified. Yeah.
And you would work
6
with
years.
people who have been more recently through uni. Has that changed much in what they're teaching in psychology?
No, not especially. No, I don't think it's changed too much. The thing about psychology is that it has to go through so much rigorous testing for years and years and years before it can actually be changed and implemented. So the science is always constantly being updated, but it does take a long time to get to our hands. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the trends of what trouble people are going through and what parts of the world might change, but the core, I guess, structure behind the problems probably don't change that much. We're still the same old humans.
Yeah, well, a lot of university, the thing is, it's all that old sort of science and theory. So a lot of it's less practical and it's more theoretical. And that theory gets tested and tested and tested and peer reviewed. So it does take a long time. And I think Australia is on average 10 years behind a lot of other countries when it comes to our science. So I have no idea why, but America's like 10 years ahead of us when it comes to the science.
Mm. Probably scared of going into new fields that are untested. Let someone else test
Yeah.
it first, maybe.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
a bit
So,
behind.
do you specialize in something when you go through uni? Or is that something you do after where you go, I'm going to hone
There's
in?
psychology is so big and broad. You would have absolutely no time to specialize while you're studying at uni. I think most people have areas that they're more interested in, but yeah, you specialize after you finish university.
And is that another course or it's just something you hone in on?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's constant
Constantly learning
courses.
something, yeah.
Constantly. We have to do a certain amount of hours of professional development every year to keep our license. So we are always being constantly trained and updated with all the science and everything like that.
And,
Yeah.
you know, as much as you don't want to believe it if you're the one sitting in the chair, there is probably a lot of learning on the job as well, right? Because
Absolutely.
you've just got to see
Yeah.
it.
I learn so much about myself with every client that I see. And, you know, I go through a lot of growth and a lot of changes with a lot of my clients. You know, you're going through it together.
Yeah, I've never actually been to a psychologist on my own. I've been told for years I should go get diagnosed with 10 different things. But me and my wife started a business together and we were operating it literally back to back, you know, at the desk. And we actually went to marriage counseling because everyone always said to us, oh, geez, good luck. You know, like I've got 10 mates that ruined their marriage and you hear all these stories. And so we went
Right.
to a couples counseling
Like
session.
before starting the
No,
business?
what after we'd started, yeah.
Okay.
So we're like a year in, and there was
Yeah.
tension, and there were things we didn't agree on. And one of them, which was a big one for me, was just trying to separate work from personal. And so we went to, I think, only 2 or 3 sessions because I think we both kind of penny dropped at the same time and was like, this is enough for now.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I'd never been there before, and they're asking a lot of personal questions, and I was like, geez, this is kind of awkward, you know, like you've got to answer this stuff. And
Yeah. It's
we got a lot out of it.
confronting.
Yeah, we got a lot out of it. And one of them was like, don't talk about work in bed, you know, like learn how to separate it. Send each other emails like you would a normal employee instead of raising it at the dinner table, you know. And I think there's important
Yeah.
rules like that for everyone to learn.
Having those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just learning, I guess, what minimum you're going to set is for like your standard if you do work with someone that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah. But I think
Um,
every couple's different too. Like whatever advice you got, it might work for you, it might not. You know, you got to figure out how you guys work together.
Yeah, yeah. So what path did you go down? What interested you when you were through all that?
So I pretty much saw everyone and anything for the first couple of years. And I think most psychologists do. You know, they dip their toe in a lot of different areas. I actually worked in rural Queensland. So when you're in a place like that, you basically see everyone that comes through the door because there's a very limited amount of psychologists. So to be able to help everyone, you know, you're not really turning any sort of presentation away. But as I've developed and as I've grown, I found myself being really interested in helping people that are neurodivergent, so people that are autistic or ADHD. So yeah, I've sort of honed in on those skills. I would say I'm only just at the beginning of specializing in that area, but I really do love it.
When you went to a rural area, is there a push for resources up there, like you say, with police and nurses and things like that, just to try and get resources?
They have nothing. They just have no resources.
And is the government pushing any kind of funding or help to get more people up there? Or
I'm not sure. Like, it's been a while since I was there, but I just remember, like, you know, the main problem a lot of my clients had was that there were no resources. There weren't many doctors that they could go to if they didn't like their doctor or if their doctor wasn't helping them. So it was a very systemic sort of issue. Or there weren't, you know, that many job opportunities. So they would get depression from not being employed.
yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
I had this moment of realization recently. It was a video of, is it Bob Hatter? You know, he's like local government up there and he's always going on rants.
I'm
I'll
not
show you
sure
a
if
video
I've seen
after.
him.
He's a local government guy who's blown up on social media at the moment because he goes on these big tangents. And he went on one the other day about cassowary birds or something. And I was,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and I just remember thinking, wow, they got really different problems to us.
Yeah, because they're quite dangerous, but they're also endangered.
Yeah.
The cassowaries.
I think he was going on about either shooting them or not shooting them. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think he's for shooting them, but it's illegal or something, and they're destroying people's farms or I don't know. But it gave me this moment of like, our problems are quite local.
And I don't think our problems are as challenging because in the cities, if you do have some sort of issue, there are so many resources that you can go to. There are so many free places that you can go for help. Whereas in the country, like that, they just don't exist.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. It's a new challenge because we're always talking about suicide prevention and anxiety
Mm.
and things like this. And we're fortunate to be in a place right now where you can basically get help anywhere.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine how isolating it feels to have those problems, but then be in a place that no one's
Yeah.
going to help you with them.
Yeah. Like in rural towns, some people, they finished school when they were 8 years old and then they worked on the farm. So their reading and writing skills are, not that developed. They might be living in a town that really doesn't have great reception. So if there's people coming in to do like checks on them, welfare checks to see if they're okay, they might, not get through. The phone line doesn't work. Um, their neighbours could be really, really far away if they're out on a farm. So there's just not that much contact, not that much support.
I go to Condobolin once a year for a motorbike rally my dad races in. It's central New South Wales, right? It's where Shannon Knoll's from, actually.
Okay.
His parents are there still anyway. And every time I go there, we end up having dinner with the farmers and stuff. We're there 4 or 5 nights. And the stories they tell are just like, this would never happen in a city.
Yeah.
Like they'll roll a car or a quad bike or something because they've got to do some farming thing in the middle of the night that can't be done during the day and they get pinned under it or they can't get help or, no reception. It's just like, we could be in different worlds. It's so different, the problems we face.
It's so different. I really value my time there because it just gave me such perspective, it just gave me so much experience. And yeah, I got to see people that were really, really in difficult situations and I was able to help them. Like I remember the first client that I saw, they had PTSD and by the end of the sessions with me did not have PTSD anymore. And I felt, felt so fulfilled and proud about that. And it was my first sort of job as a
PTSD is a
psychologist.
weird one, right? Because it kind of sneaks up on you.
PTSD?
Yeah. I think it's harder for somebody to, you tell me, but I think it's harder for somebody to self-diagnose.
Yeah, I mean, self-diagnosing is hard. Some people are great at reading the research and understanding themselves and having self-awareness. And I have had people come to me and they self-diagnose. I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably what's happening. And then other people just have absolutely no awareness and no idea.
But I think most people know if they're depressed or most people know the feeling of anxiety. But I feel like PTSD is one of those ones that's hard to say, I'm feeling this right now.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised about the amount of people they'll tell me what's going on. And, then I say to them, have you ever thought that you have depression? And some of them will go, oh, I had no idea. And sometimes it can be because they're in such a daze of their life. They're not really they're just not really self-aware because they're in such a bad place.
What are some of the common PTSD kind of traits people feel?
So PTSD, you have to have, there's a certain criteria to qualify for PTSD. You're having flashbacks, you're having nightmares or really intrusive thoughts of the traumatic event. And one of the criterias, it's a criteria for the DSM-5 anyway, which is how we diagnose all mental health disorders in Australia. The event needs to be something that was serious danger or life-threatening, or you're a witness to that. So unfortunately, there's also this, group of people that they do experience PTSD, but the event that they've gone through hasn't been traumatic. Traumatic, what the DSM-5 says. So these sort of people, they might see a psychologist and the psychologist will follow the DSM-5 and just go, well, actually, you don't qualify to have PTSD, and they can feel a little bit lost. So there are other psychologists that will sort of categorize traumas as in small trauma and big trauma. and they will still treat you as if you've got PTSD when technically you don't qualify. So that diagnosis problem, it can get really
It's got to be
complicated.
flexible, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have a really flexible approach. I'm like, whatever you're feeling is whatever you're feeling. We don't have to put you into a category, but sometimes it can be really tricky to get the right treatment if you don't fit into a box.
I've had PTSD once, and I pushed through it myself and didn't really talk to anyone about it. But I think because at the time I didn't realize that that's what it was. I'd never felt it
Yeah.
before. But I was working as an armed security guard, and were doing a check on this building. And the next day, I get called from the police saying you've got to come in as a witness for this crime that's happened. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it turned out that a girl had been raped and murdered at the site that I was doing checks on that night.
Oh, wow.
And they kind of used our GPS in the car to pinpoint the information they had, and basically told me that I was driving past her while it was happening, and then again later past her body that was left in the bush. And I remember at the time thinking I was an armed guard, I was in a bulletproof vest. I could have immediately stopped it. You know, you see these scenarios where you're like, no one could have helped. I could have absolutely helped in the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's what was the hardest thing to get over, was this feeling of, it was literally only a meter and a half high bush that she was on the other side of. And I
Mm-hmm.
had the windows up and some music playing. I couldn't hear what was going on. And I've driven straight past it literally while the murderer was there.
Wow.
And it was just this feeling of like, I literally could have saved her life. And that stuck with me for probably 2 months of dreaming about the scenario. It was all over the news at the time. She was an international student. And that was, I think I didn't recognize it as PTSD because it didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just a guy driving along in a car. But there was just this constant feeling of like, what if?
So was there a lot of feelings of guilt?
Yeah, I think it was like, what if I had the window down? I could have heard something. If I'd
Yeah.
gotten out, I could have stopped her. We knew that he didn't have a weapon, and I did.
Yeah.
You know, so like there was just this scenario of like, if all these things happened, that girl would be alive. I could have saved it.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to, I guess, forget about it is the best way to say it, because I didn't do anything other than wait long enough that I stopped thinking about it. But I think that's part of PTSD, is it doesn't actually have to happen to you.
Absolutely.
You know, the people at
Yeah.
Bondi yesterday, they're putting out a lot of resources already, but the PTSD from an event like that, from just the people that were sitting at home and have heard about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
that usually take their family to Bondi and now don't feel comfortable to, like it's going to be
Absolutely.
so widespread.
And it can bring up all sorts of things for people. So if you already were feeling, a little bit on edge, or if you were already feeling that, you're having problems even in your relationship or at work, it brings everything up for people, and it brings, that thought that might not be here tomorrow. So it can bring up a lot of other very, what feels quite unrelated issues.
It's like a reminder of your own
Yeah,
mortality. You know? It's just
exactly.
like, wow, that could have just as easily been me.
Exactly.
We were actually meant to go to Bondi Beach yesterday, and my wife was like, can't be bothered driving out there, but it's just like,
So lucky.
it's just those little things that
Yeah.
you just think, wow, like I know that beach back to front. We go there all the time. We take
Yeah.
our daughter, and then you hear that a child died. And I think probably worldwide, it'll be a reminder of that, but especially in Australia. I mean, there's probably barely a person in this country that doesn't know about Bondi Beach, and probably not a
Mm.
single person in Sydney that hasn't been there.
Yeah.
It's that common
It's
of a
that
place.
popular. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, so last year when the stabbings happened, I was at Bondi Junction with a friend, and we left 1 hour before he was there. And I just remember the rest of that night, like I didn't really sleep that well, and it just caused so much anxiety for that whole week because I was so close to it. And I mean, I wouldn't call that PTSD. I would call it just being human,
Mm.
like,
Just that feeling of sadness.
yeah, and you're going to be affected by these things. That's normal.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to ask a psychologist, is it weird going to a psychologist yourself? Do you feel like you should know the answers?
Nah, you know what? I don't. No.
Okay.
No, I go in very open-minded and just wanting help. I do see someone that's more experienced and older than me if I ever do go see her. So I feel like she's also more of maybe a mentor in that respect.
That's what I was
But
about to say. It feels like it would be more
yeah,
of a mentor thing as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it does have that bit of a crossover. But I mean, yeah, there were times actually before I found someone good where I would go and see a psychologist and I just kind of felt like I know what tricks you're doing, and it's not going to work
You
with
think they
me.
wouldn't try them knowing you're
Yeah.
a psychologist, but yeah.
But the thing is, it's all about rapport. If you don't
Yeah.
get along with the person, it's not going to work. So it doesn't matter how qualified you are. It doesn't matter how many skills you have. If you just can't vibe with them, if you can't have a conversation with them, it's not going to work. So those other psychologists that I saw for myself, I probably just wasn't going to get along with them.
Yeah, I feel like it's not even to a business coach. You know, sometimes you're doing something wrong in your own business that you would give someone else the better advice on, even though you're not doing it yourself. And it takes someone to highlight that for you and go, hang on a minute,
Yeah,
you know better than that.
absolutely. And sometimes I think, you just need a bit of reassurance. You just need to talk things out sometimes.
That's true as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously everyone needs someone to talk to.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that, talking to somebody who's not a psychologist, you'd be like, this is a waste of time. They're not going to be able to help me.
You know what? You can learn something from everyone though.
That's true.
Yeah, you can.
So talk to me about ADHD. So what's this whole ADD, ADHD, now they're the same thing? What happened there?
It's just the title.
Okay.
That's all it is. So it's now just ADHD. There is no ADD anymore. And the thing about ADHD, I think the first thing to sort of like understand is that the name itself doesn't really do it justice because it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and not everybody with ADHD has the hyperactivity, and it's not really an attention deficit. It's an attention regulation issue. So someone with ADHD might have extreme attention and focus for the things that they're interested in, but then they cannot regulate that. So they might not be able to finish when they need to finish and switch tasks when they need to switch tasks. And for something that they're not interested in, they cannot focus at all. So it's more about regulating their focus and attention. It's not a deficit.
Okay, that makes sense.
So even in the name itself, it's like it doesn't really explain it properly.
There's like a constant joke in my house that if you look up ADHD in the dictionary, there's a photo of me. And the only reason I'm not on meds is because they haven't made them powerful enough yet.
Look,
it's common, right?
It's really common. It's really common. And to be honest, I think a lot of the science is still yet to discover and understand a lot of it, because there are so many nuances and there's so many people that almost fit it, almost fit the ADHD and then they kind of don't. And there's also a lot of crossover. So the latest statistics that I heard was that there's an 80% crossover between ADHD and autism. So 80% of people with autism are also diagnosed with ADHD. I had no idea it was such a high prevalence.
Yeah, wow.
The numbers could be slightly different, but there's a really high crossover.
I've got a younger brother who's got high functioning autism, Asperger's, and he's not ADHD one bit. He's so hyper focused on everything that's important, and he knows how to. He got like 99.7 on his ATAR. Like he's one of those.
So he doesn't have
Elon
the
Musk.
executive dysfunction side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going through uni now to be an engineer, and he's already gotten some award in his first year and 100% on all his tests, and it's just crazy to see. I think about it all the time when I talk to him that if he was born 50 years ago or 100 years ago, it would have been treated like it was a problem. Yet in today's world, he's like just exceeding massively. Yeah, it's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And so technically he would be like the term Asperger's is out as well. It's autism spectrum disorder, and then he would, I assume, be level 1. So in Australia, we've got levels. We've got level 1, level 2, level 3. It doesn't really mean how autistic you are per se. It more means at what level of support and help do you require. So typically someone autism level 1, they don't really require that much support. They probably just need to be in a job that they really enjoy. They probably just need a support system around them. Level 2, though, you might need the therapies, you might need the OT, things like that, some sensory comforts, NDIS you can apply for and get some government-funded supports. And then level 3 is a little bit less common, and that's, your people that need 24-hour support.
Like non-verbal type thing. Yeah. Well, I know my brother was diagnosed when he was 5, and from 5 till basically 18, he was seeing a psychologist the entire time, and then along the way was medicated as well. And then
Yeah.
he got to 18 and basically just said, hey, I'm pretty sure I can tackle this on my own, and stopped seeing his psychologist, got himself off the medication.
That's
And we were
awesome.
super proud of him at the time because it would be very scary to do that.
Yeah.
And he's just gone from strength to strength. And I think it's kind of the upside of it is just the mental focus he's got, that when he puts his mind to something, it's going to happen. Like, it never is he said, I'm going to do this, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And he's very good at finishing tasks, which is the opposite of me.
Yeah.
I start a million things, but he only starts a few things and makes sure they're
And
done
he
properly and
finishes
finishes
it.
them.
Yeah.
He knows where to draw the line. That's my problem.
That's amazing though that he was able to do that. Like, good on him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was at the time we were just like, are you sure? But I mean, what was the negative going to come out of it? He might
Yeah.
have to go back to getting help. But
Yeah.
he, like I said, he's just one of those people that when he felt ready, that was it. There was nothing was going to change his mind.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of younger people that look up to him for that as well. He's got a lot of friends, that kind of know his situation and are in similar ones themselves. And I think, for him, he grew up in a very encouraging house, and a house that got him help early as well is probably a big factor, right? Because some people go their whole lives and end up in their 20s or 30s or 40s or however old getting help for the first time, whereas he got it straight away.
So absolutely. So if he like I said with the levels, they also do, they can change. For example, if he grew up without, your guys' support, he might have been more of a level 2 as an adult. So it makes a huge difference getting that early support for sure.
So ADHD is something that comes up constantly as an entrepreneur, right? And in the business world.
Absolutely.
Because
It's very,
everyone thinks
very
it's their
common.
superpower. And I think it
Yeah.
is a superpower, but it's also can be one of the biggest problems, I think, depending
Absolutely.
on your business type and,
Yep.
and how much you've grown as a business, because I think ADHD is the best medicine to get you started.
Yes, get you started.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of people with ADHD, and I think the biggest things that we work on is, number one, the acceptance. So for whatever reason, people that have ADHD, they always want to be able to do everything themselves, and they always want to do things the right way, the perfect way, and it takes a lot for them to accept that there might just be things that they need help with. So I do a lot of work with them, trying to find ways to delegate and to get someone else to do the things that they're just not going to do.
Interesting.
And that is a lot more successful than trying to change the way that your brain naturally operates. So I do a lot of work with people understanding how their brain works, what has worked in the past, what hasn't. We stop all the things that just don't work, So they'll say, oh, I keep wanting to do this, and how do I do this better? I'm like, do we need to do this anymore? Get someone else to do it. If it's not working, just stop doing it.
Yeah, I've struggled a lot with business coaches, sales coaches, life coaches, anybody who tries to put me in a regiment and fill in your diary, and you've got to do A, B, C each day, and you've got to do this at this time. And if this thing pops up and it's important to you, you've got to put it aside because you've got this other thing to do, and it falls apart in like a month.
It wouldn't work. So I would never do that, because first of all, you're being told what to do. You're probably not really wanting to do that because you've been told what to do. And they're not really going to the effort of trying to understand how your brain works. And there might be parts of your brain that you haven't explored yet fully, and you don't fully understand yet. And that's usually the first place that I start. Because if something is just not working for you and you've tried again and again and again, what's the point in doing it again?
I read a book probably 2 years ago now called Rocket Fuel. It's behind you on the shelf, actually. I don't know if you ever read Rocket Fuel or Traction, this book here.
No, I've never read
The
them.
books actually are about a business structure called EOS, which is like a framework for operating your business and reporting and things like that.
Okay.
But the hidden gem of the book, Rocket Fuel, and I would love for you to read it, it basically describes the relationship between an implementer in a business and a visionary in a business, and how the two together combined can explode an organization, whereas operating independently can sometimes be the limiting factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I see it as the book's about the guy with ADHD and the guy without it.
Yeah.
Because the guy with ADHD is going to come up with the really good ideas and also solve the really big problems, but not have the time and attention to do the paperwork and the process and the procedure that needs to happen for it to all come to life.
The stuff that's a little bit less exciting.
Yeah,
There's a little
but
bit less dopamine
The
involved.
other side of that is the person who really enjoys that stuff. But I think as somebody, especially somebody who's 100% ADHD, unofficially diagnosed, but I guarantee it, I can't imagine anybody being any different to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
So
can't picture it.
putting yourself into someone else's shoes.
Yeah, I'm like, why would they want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine it. But off the back of that book, I actually hired a CEO in our business.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone always says to me, that's weird that you are the founder of the business and not the CEO. And I'm like, and I can't steer the ship because I'll be down fixing the engine for a
Yeah.
week and no one's up there on lookout.
So
We'll hit
you,
an iceberg.
yeah. So you've done your own problem solving, understand like what you're good at, focusing on what you're good at and not trying to do the stuff that you're just not going to excel at.
So is there a type of person or a split of people that are medicated versus not when it comes to ADHD? Is there much around that at the moment? I know it was something that was medicated, but is that still common or?
It just depends if the person wants to be on medication and if it works for them. So for some people, the medication works and it works really, really well. Like it can be
But
absolutely
do they lose their
life-changing.
spice? Like, is it?
No, I've got ones that absolutely, like clients that they've said that all their anxiety is just gone from ADHD medication because the interesting thing is that they thought they were highly anxious, but really it was the executive dysfunction, and the medication has allowed them to break through those barriers so they don't have those issues with, you know, time management, getting things done, staying on task. So all the anxiety about doing those things is gone. So they haven't lost their personality. It's just like one area of their brain is able to follow through and get stuff done.
Yeah, I think it's tough to imagine, I guess, what it's like until you try it.
Yeah.
But if there's underlying problems that your ADHD is creating, like depression or anxiety,
Yeah.
that's probably the best time to treat it. Whereas if you don't have those things, coping mechanisms are probably the main treatment, right?
Exactly. And look, every time I talk with a client and we're discussing the route of medication, I say, well, look, this is an experiment. We don't know how it's going to affect you. So we're constantly trialing it. We're constantly wanting to, you know, journal it and see how it's going for you because everybody's different. We don't know necessarily how you're going to react. Like we can take a good guess. And the psychiatrist is really the ones that, you know, give all the education on that. But at the end of the day, it's still an experiment. I've got a lot of people that they might use the medication for university and then when they're on holidays, they stop using it. So they use it interchangeably and throughout different phases in their life, and they find that that can work really well. But it's different for everyone. Every client that I've had that's on medication, they'll have different stories that they tell me. So I'm always really focused on how it's helping that person or how it's not helping that person and what we need to sort of look out for.
So what are some of the common things, like I just said about people trying to put you in a box of structure? What are some of the things that are just like, don't bother doing that because it's not going to help your ADHD?
I mean, I look at it from a really individualized perspective. So I ask people what's not working, what's never worked. And again, that's where I say, like, you know, we're just not going to do any of that ever again. And that's where the huge piece of acceptance goes because, you know,
Are people in denial about
Yeah.
it? Okay, yeah.
And they can get really disappointed and say, look, I'm saying this because I want you to do the things that are actually going to make long-lasting changes. I don't want this to help you for a week. That's not my goal. Like I want it to help you for the rest of your life. So I want to find things that are going to support your brain. Usually it's changing the environment. So maybe changing where they work or how they work, maybe changing how they interact with others, maybe changing the phone that they have, you know. So the environment is a really, really big factor for people with ADHD.
Yeah, I find for me in my own experience with it, if you wind back to when I felt that I'd never even thought of having ADHD, was because the only real things I had there were like getting hyper focused on the things I love. You know, I've always been into cars and motorbikes. So when something breaks on my car, I'll pull it into a million pieces to find it. But then when I put it back together, everything's going to go back exactly how it was and nothing can squeak or rattle. Everything's going to be perfect. But then my job was a simple job where I went to work. There were only so many things that had to happen. And I'd go home and there was no kind of, like there was nothing I could do at home for work. So then I'd just go back into my hobbies.
Yeah.
But then when I started the business and the amount of work has never ended, it really, for me, exaggerated my ADHD to a whole new level because all of a sudden I've got to choose how much work to take on and I can never say no to it. So I'm always overwhelming myself with more work that can't be done.
And is that the that's the like guessing how well you're going to do these things, and you
Yeah.
sort of over like
Yeah.
like you think, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to do this, this, and this, but it's a bit unrealistic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. It
yeah,
is. Well,
yeah.
I would say I don't let people down because it's a big character trait of mine. Like the thought of letting people down would kill me on the inside.
So you struggle to say no.
Yeah, so because I don't want to let people down, I don't say no. But then because I don't want to let people down, and I've said yes, then I end up working 24-hour days all the time trying to get to the goal I've promised. You
Yeah.
know? And so that's to my own health detriment. And at some point, you've got to learn to say, this is actually more than I can do. We've got to say no.
Yeah, yeah. Which I imagine would be a hard thing for you.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
getting there. Every time my wife goes away, everyone in the office is like, oh God, here we go. Because she's the one that, no, Rick, you've got to go to bed. You've got to come home from work at 5:30.
Yeah.
You know, like she sets the rules. Then when she goes away, I'm like a zombie because I just work the entire time. But I think there's like everything, there's so many positives compared to negatives. And for me, I think with ADHD especially, the hardest thing of starting a business is getting started. And I think it gives you the confidence to get started.
Mm.
But then from there, you're either somebody who's going to finish the task or not. And that's probably where a lot of businesses either work or don't.
Yeah.
But it's that almost like that courage to say, I'm confident in myself that I can do that, even though I don't know how to right now. So I'm just going to say yes and figure it out in the way. And I think for people who don't have ADHD, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the highs and lows for people that don't have ADHD, that's going to cause like a lot of stress. Whereas I think with people with ADHD, it's exciting. So that they love the roller coaster ride of like, they don't know what's going to happen. Whereas for a lot of people, that would just cause an enormous amount of stress.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife thinks I'm like a lunatic because
Yeah.
sometimes she'll look at me, she's like, doesn't that worry? I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
Or the world will fall apart and I'll still be asleep snoring away, you know, like it just doesn't bother me. But it's funny because you do need that. And I remember I read a business book a long time ago that there was a line in it that said, in your business, the best thing can happen in one day, and in the same day, the worst thing can happen. And if you let them control your emotions, the good and the bad in business especially, but really it applies to life in general, then your emotions will always be all over the shop because there's always going to be a fire in one corner and something amazing in the other. And for me, I don't know if it's got to do with my ADHD or not, but for me, I've always done a really good job of not letting really the outside world control my emotions. Like I'll do it to myself. I'll get overtired and get annoyed with things or whatever, but really, you know, like I'll get a phone call at work sometimes. The other day we had a work card written off by a P plater who's worked for us for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And my business partner rings me. He's like, geez, I hope you're sitting down. I'm like, what happened? And I thought he was going to say something way worse. He's like, oh, one of the guys just wrote off a car. It's the new guy. He's the P plater you sent it to hire, you know. And I was like, oh, call insurance, get a tow truck, send it back to the yard, find out what the damage is, see if it's going to be written off. Call me after all that's done. Like,
yeah.
what am I going to get angry about now? The car's already crashed, you know. He's not ADHD at all.
Yeah.
And to him, it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just like,
Problem solve.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me one bit.
Those high pressure, complicated environments, you know, ADHD people can really, really thrive. You know?
Which is why it's probably such a common conversation amongst entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said to you before that narcissism's always intrigued me because I wonder, you know, what it's got to do with entrepreneurs or business owners. And I remember reading about it a while ago. There's like 11 or 12 traits or something to narcissism, and it's commonly known as all the negative ones, obviously, which are like the disregard for other people or whatever, or seeing yourself, you know, above other people, that kind of thinking. But there's also a bunch of other traits that I think, and maybe it's because it walks the line of ADHD a bit, I'm not sure, but I've always thought that, you know, in business or success or entrepreneurship or being an athlete or anything at a high level requires an abnormal amount of self-belief and conviction that no one's better than me. I can be the best. It's up to me. No one else is better than me, you know, in a positive way, not because you're trying to put people down, but because you see yourself as, you know, being able to be at that level. And, but I've never really thought about how someone would get diagnosed with narcissism because, you know, maybe it's got nothing to do with it, it's just my thoughts on it. But it just seems that if there's a personality trait that's got to do with that unwavering belief and that almost, it doesn't matter what goes wrong, I'm still going to come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying to you before, though, you can have all those qualities and then still be a really loving, caring, empathetic person. So you might have those qualities, but you're not actually narcissistic.
Mm,
There might be like, a little splash of it, but you wouldn't really qualify for a narcissist,
mm, mm.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
It's
trait that got
it's
probably butchered in the 90s when everyone was beating their wives and stuff.
yeah,
I think that's where it got a
absolutely.
bad rap, and you don't hear anyone talk about it now. Like it's
Narcissism.
not a publicly kinda, you hear anxiety, depression, ADHD, PTSD, you hear all these things constantly, but narcissism's kinda like, let's leave that one to the side.
Yeah, I still hear it a bit, I guess, from my clients because they often they feel like they might be in a relationship with a
Mhm,
narcissist.
mhm,
But I often do a lot of education, and a lot of the time, narcissism can look like other things. Actually, even autism, it can look quite similar to narcissism, or someone that's been through a lot of trauma. So
mm.
there's so many nuances. Again, with psychology, there's so many crossovers that one thing might look like another. The thing with narcissism is that you've got to get to the bottom of the person's intention and what they're thinking. Their behavior and the way they communicate might look like one thing, but then what's going on underneath that and what's going on behind that might be quite different.
Trauma is a very, complicated one, right? Because the human mind creates so many things off the back of trauma as coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
almost probably every person you deal with is is battling something maybe they weren't born with, right? A lot of it would come from some underlying thing that happened to them in life as a trauma response.
Yeah, a lot. And look, some people are, I guess I would say, like more sensitive to, traumatic things happening. If they've got higher traits of neuroticism, they're just more emotional. So, they might take longer to recover from things that other people recover really quickly. So it's all relative to the individual too,
So
you
what's
know?
it like in the business world of a psychologist? Is it one of these, you've got to really be in with the group, you hear that a bit with doctors and people like that.
I found that psychologists are really, really supportive to one another. And that has been like a really beautiful thing to see in my industry. Every psychologist that I know, if I'm going through anything or if I'm having a difficulty, they are absolutely willing to give up their time to help me. There's not really that much competition. Most psychologists feel that, if clients are going to another psychologist, that they are just happy that that client's getting what they need rather than like, oh no, that should be my client.
Mm,
Like there's none
mhm.
of that. So I think it is quite different to a lot of other businesses because our core values is that the client comes first, their mental health comes first, and our business comes second, which can be tricky for us to manage from a financial business perspective. But at the end of the day, like that's our code of ethics and that's our like morals. And, it's the reason why we do what we do is to help the client, not to help ourselves.
Yeah, I guess the underlying reason you become a psychologist is not to be a millionaire, probably.
Yeah,
It's to help
exactly.
people and be successful in doing
Yeah,
that. So, yeah,
yeah,
that's probably a big part of it. But you're right. It's funny to think of it in a business perspective to say, if a competitor wins a customer, usually you've lost that
yeah,
customer.
yeah,
It's one less person that you can provide a service to. But
absolutely.
I
But
guess if you put them first, which every business should put the customer first anyway, but I think a lot of the time we think we're a better fit. Maybe that
yeah,
does still happen in your industry sometimes. You think you're a better fit than someone else, but
yeah, sometimes. I mean, look, I think when you're a psychologist and you have a strong belief within yourself, you know that the right clients are going to come to you and you know that, when you finish up with a client that you've got space for a new one and then they'll, a new person will come to you. So I think if you have enough self-belief and you have the right skills and you're good at what you do, you're not worried about losing a client to somebody else.
so is it similar to I've heard, or I know dentists are similar, where you kind of the dentist rents a chair. Does a psychologist rent a room in a business, and you're under their brand, or is it something you commonly go out on your own with, or?
There's a wide variety. So you can be an employee, you can rent a room and work for yourself, or you can work from home, or you can be a contractor. So, you're sort of renting the room, but the business is also doing the marketing, the advertising, the
Mm.
admin for you. And then they're usually taking a cut for that.
Yeah, it's very common in tradies specifically, where because
Mm.
you're the professional, you get caught in that. It's hard to go from that to being a business owner, where you're
Yeah,
not treating the people anymore. You're now running a business, and I think
yeah,
that'd be a hard change. especially for a psychologist, because you're in it really to help people.
Yeah.
But if you really want to grow your business, you're going to get very far away from that.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of psychologists get really stuck in that because they might want to grow from a business perspective, but they're really struggling to do all of those sort of other tasks and they miss just helping people and doing their job. I feel like for me, I'm a bit lucky because I like a bit of both. And, I like spending a couple days just doing admin and business, and it gives me a bit of time to like rest, recover, and get some of my energy back. So I like a bit of that mix.
Yeah, it's tough
Yeah.
because you normally don't get into business because you enjoy doing the back end. You
Yeah.
do it because you enjoy whatever the front end is, whether it's building a house or helping people.
Yeah.
But at some point, it comes down to your own wants, I guess. Can you get what you want out of life through just working for yourself or working for someone, or do you have to go to that next level?
Yeah, for sure.
Is there kind of main businesses that take up most of the market, and a lot of people end up more or less subcontracting to them? Is that
I think there's a lot of small private practices, to be honest. I'm not sure if there's a couple of like main businesses. I mean, a few of the big businesses are employee assistance program designed businesses. So they're your EAP providers, which means that really big companies, for example, the Commonwealth Bank, will contract you as a business and you provide free therapy to the employees of like a huge company like Commonwealth Bank. So that would be like an example of a really big business, but I'm not sure of that many others.
It's funny you say that because we get asked that a lot about bodyguarding. Like, oh, who uses a bodyguard? And it's like, well, a lot of the time, actually, it's large organizations that are helping a staff member.
Yeah.
Either something's happened in their personal life or professional life, and they provide it as a service for the better health of their, for their employees, I guess. We've had a few scenarios where on personal matters that had nothing to do with their employment, a large organization's provided security or help or whatever. And you hear that a lot. I've never had a job in a business like that. I've always worked for small kind of privately owned businesses. But you do hear a lot of the larger ones, bringing people to give a massage on a Friday or talk about your mental health or but you do see a lot of that now. BetterHelp's one I see on YouTube a lot.
Yeah,
these kind of like
BetterHelp's pretty big.
readily available.
Yeah.
And so I guess as a professional, you could plug into the back of that, but it's probably not the best client base.
Yeah, I think the clients that work for BetterHelp or the psychologists, they would like do a contracting sort of situation with them. I mean, most big companies probably use like a psychology practice as their EAP. And then, I mean, you've got places like the police force, they use psychologists.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, so doing assessments. I'm sure there's a few businesses that out there that, they're a bit bigger and they do assessments. But I guess from what I know, the psychology practices and businesses, they're not that huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I finally convinced myself to do an ADHD diagnosis last year. But
so you did get a diagnosis?
No. Remember, I've got ADHD. So I called the first two people on Google. They were all booked out 6 months, and I was like, don't worry about it. I've lost steam on this.
Should have come to me.
The excitement's over, yeah. But I remember thinking at the time, like, geez, they're booked up a long time.
Yeah, especially when they're really well known. There's not a huge amount of psychologists that are actually trained in assessing for it. You've got to do that extra level of training. There's also a lot of people that would prefer to go to the psychiatrist because if you go to your psychiatrist, you can get the diagnosis and the medication in the one sort of session. Whereas if you see a psychologist, they're not able to prescribe medication. So they can give you a diagnosis, but then you need to take that to your psychiatrist. And a lot of psychiatrists, they'll make you do the diagnosis process all over again because they don't want to look at another psychologist's work. They want to do the diagnosis from themselves.
What's the core difference between psychologist and psychiatrist?
So psychiatrist is like a general practitioner, so a doctor that has done extra training to become a psychiatrist. So they're basically a doctor and a psychologist in one. They have done like 10 to 15 years worth of study.
Okay, so it's a much higher.
Much higher.
Okay,
Yeah. They're a doctor and a psychologist in one, so they can prescribe medication. Psychologist, we essentially do the talk therapy, we do assessments, but we don't provide medication.
I was walking through an airport once late to the plane, and they were, they read out who's late to the plane.
Yeah.
And over the air they go, can Dr. Richard Theodorakis please come to blah, blah, blah? And I was like, doctor? I like the sound of that. I Googled like uni courses that I could be a doctorate at for like a good week or two. And then I lost steam on it. Yeah.
You're going to do your PhD for that.
Yeah, it's a long,
lot of study.
that's a lot of study. Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah.
And I'm assuming most people don't go to that level because it's not if
in
you want to niche in, you don't need to.
Yeah, not in Australia, but in America, you actually, I'm pretty sure for the clinical psychologist, they have to, or at least they have to become a clin psych. I guess it's a lot more like it's looked on upon more like really important, I guess, in America. But in Australia, not really.
Yeah, they've got a culture for titles over there, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like your entire personality hinges on what title you've got.
Whereas Australia is a bit more, relaxed. If you can do the job, you can do the job. We don't care as much about the titles. They still do a little bit though.
So what's the career progression then? Is it more about just honing your craft into a certain area and becoming known for that?
Yeah, and I think becoming niche. I mean, the next thing that I'm looking at doing, I actually just applied over the weekend, was to do my master's program. So I did a program called the 4+2, which is, you do your 4 years at university, you get your honours degree, and then you do 2 years internship. And that gives me qualification to be a registered psychologist, but to be a clinically endorsed psychologist, I need to do my master's. So it's an extra 2 years of study.
And I guess if you're working for yourself, as a more or less sole trader without employees, that uni time's taking away from clinic time, which is taken away from income.
Yeah.
And when the studies for so long, like you're writing off a decade, which I guess when you're doing it with such passion, it's not, you're not there just for the money. So it's a bit of a different scenario probably.
Yeah. But it still gets challenging, like life will still happen and you still have to pay your bills and all of that. So it can be really tricky. I know a lot of psychologists that they've had to study part-time, work part-time just to get through, and they might take 15 years to become fully qualified because it's so challenging.
And expensive.
And expensive. Yeah.
The government recently put out a 20 or 30% cut on HECS debt or something. And I don't have HECS debt because I never went to uni, but I can imagine if you're somebody who's already paid it off, you'd be pretty annoyed.
Yeah, I already paid mine off.
Yeah, thanks government. Yeah, give it to everyone that's already got the bill.
I know, but I'm like, I paid it off a while ago, so that's all right.
Yeah, so there was a real business lesson in what you said there because, I spent a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs and everybody's in a different struggle, but there's a real wall people get to of growth in business. And I think the mistake, and you kind of just said it there, is even as a psychologist, is when we need more, we feel like we have to go wider. A new service, add something on, do something extra, find a way to charge for something new we haven't before. We think that's the way to grow.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's really the opposite. And it's the opposite in almost everything. I've never spoken to somebody who's actually said, oh, well, we get better at doing something by doing more of it. It's like, no, we just get really good at a really specific thing so that we're the best at that.
And that's what I want to do. I want to stop doing too many things. Yeah. And
Me too.
Focus. Let's just focus on one or two things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because you can't be great at too many things.
No.
And so you're either going to be mediocre at a lot of things for a long time, or if you're really somebody who wants to push the boundaries and get great at something, you can only gather more time by doing less of everything else.
Absolutely.
So what's your plan? Is the plan into a clinic or?
The plan is to build up my own practice. So that's my next step, is talking to GPs, advertising my business, and probably hiring out a room completely on my own. So up until this point, I've mostly contracted or been an employee, but I really want to move into that space where I'm completely working for myself. And then we would see where that takes us.
I guess referrals are probably a huge part of what you do, right?
Yeah. So getting referrals. I mean, if you've got a website, which mine should be created and finished by the end of Jan.
Doesn't it suck doing a website?
Yeah, I outsourced that.
Especially if you're a perfectionist.
I was like, I really did not want to learn that. So I was like, I'm outsourcing, even if it's going to take a bit longer. That's all right. So a great website, you're going to get clients. I actually have a colleague of mine. She says she gets a lot of people coming through her website because they're looking at ChatGPT. That's how they're finding her.
Yeah.
But the biggest place that we probably find our clients is through GPs. Yeah. So you've got to
having a good network of them.
Yeah. So you could build your relationship with the GPs, which that's what my next step is. And then I really do want to niche down and focus on just a couple of areas and really perfect those sort of skills. I think most psychologists, we kind of have to spend a few years doing a bit of everything to really, gain experience and to figure out what you do like, because if you haven't tried it, you don't know.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience where you kind of, if you don't know, I mean, anybody who's starting in any industry or any new space, especially out of school or whatever, you have
Yeah.
no choice but to start wide. That's why uni
Yeah.
is so general,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you've got to give people a general idea.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you're right. You do find, I guess, what you enjoy or what you hate less.
Yeah.
Because you definitely learn what you don't like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was there a certain part of psychology where you're just like, God, I don't want to do that?
Not in studying it, but in practice, there's definitely a few areas that I don't enjoy working in. So, I don't really take on those presentations. Most psychologists have at least a few presentations that they won't work with.
Yeah, well, it's such a big category,
Yeah.
right? Like you've got child psychology as well, which is completely separate, right?
Yeah.
Would
Absolutely.
it'd be a whole new uni course, surely?
You know what? Surprisingly, it's not. I mean, you should do a bit of extra training and, supervision. Supervision's a big one, but I see both adults and kids. I see more adults than kids because that's where my experience lies. But with the kids, I probably just do like a little bit of extra research or a bit of extra planning for those sessions.
You hear now more than ever talk around anxiety and depression being such a big problem. Suicide's probably the worst it's been, especially in men. I think the stats I saw the other day was 75% of men, 75% of suicides are men.
Yeah.
I did Movember for the first time this year. Thank God that thing's gone. Everyone was sick of it, including me. I couldn't believe it though. Actually, on the last day of Movember, the guys from the company Movember called me and were like,
"Oh, really?
Hey, we just want to ask if you're okay. You signed up to Movember. We assume for a reason. Like, do you need someone to talk to?" And I was like,
"That's amazing.
Geez, I didn't expect that."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, this is our favorite part of doing it. Is a lot of people sign up in silence because they're battling something themselves."
Absolutely.
And so they do it for the help of other people, but because they are somebody who needs help. So we ring everybody. And I was like, that's incredible.
That's amazing.
It's a huge resource.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Men are, notoriously risky for suicide. And there's a couple of reasons. One is because a lot of the times they actually have more access to the type of things that, you can use to kill yourself. So, they might have more tools, like for example, tradies, they'll have, I don't even know what you use, but more of the tools and things like that. They're also a lot
maybe more things reminding them as well of, I could do it this way, I could do it that way.
Yeah. There's also, men are bigger risk takers than women and they're a bit more impulsive. So those sort of things all together. And then the biggest one is a lack of like sharing their feelings, sharing their thoughts and not having a network of, friends that they can actually talk to. Whereas women are really good at picking up the phone and talking to their friends.
Yeah, men don't do that.
They just don't. Not enough.
We try to. I can tell you some of us try to, but it's just awkward. Men don't like talking about their feelings. I don't know why. It's because we feel less manly doing it. I've had 2 friends that have committed suicide. One was only recently. It was 2 months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear.
Thank you. And it was absolutely on impulse. He's
so that impulsivity.
Yeah, he's got a partner and a child. His child's who found him. And it was a pure, had an argument, walked out in the backyard and did it. And I've known the guy my whole life. We grew up next door neighbors. And he was never you would never consider him somebody who would leave their child and partner behind like that.
Yeah.
And if any intervention happened between that walk from inside the house to the backyard,
would have saved his
there's
life.
no way he would have done it in the right frame of mind. But the problem is men get that foggy brain, cannot think straight, full of rage. This is the answer. And it's so quick to do.
Absolutely.
And in my other friend, we were only 19 at the time, exact same scenario, just walked out to the shed and did it. And there was no, everyone says there was no signs, but that's because that type of suicide there isn't signs for, because it's not a long-term thought process where you've planned it out and gone,
quick.
I'm going to do it this way. It's just something happens, you flip a switch and you walk out and do it.
Yeah.
And that's the tough ones to understand.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really sad.
Do you have many people that really come and talk about that, or?
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially when people have known other people that have committed suicide, but I deal with a lot of people that have suicidal thoughts. And I always do a bit of I do a really thorough assessment figuring out, are those suicidal thoughts going to lead to a plan of action, or are the suicidal thoughts, and this is probably what I see more commonly in my practice anyway, is that they have the suicidal thoughts, but it's more because they don't see a way out. So they see suicide as a solution to a problem that they cannot solve. And a lot of those clients, I say that to them and they're like, yeah, actually, that's exactly how I feel. I don't actually want to commit suicide, but I cannot see a way out. I cannot see a solution. And I go, okay, well, let's work with that then. You know,
I
let's
didn't
find
know
those
that,
solutions.
but I've always thought that it's a frame of mindset that there is no other way out of this. That this thing I'm facing is permanent. There's no way out of it. I'm stuck with it, and I don't want to be. So this is my only choice.
Yeah, there's just that they cannot see a way out. And I think, like your friend, even having kids, at that moment, he would not have been thinking of his kids, right? So he would have been in that dark of a place, and like you said, that foggy of a place that nothing else would have even crossed his mind. He would have been in so much pain and just acting on impulse that it wouldn't even cross his mind. So it's not that he didn't care. It's not that, you know, he wanted to leave them or anything like that. In that moment, he just couldn't see out of it.
Yeah, I can see from his family that the hardest thing to get a grip on is almost like, why would he do this to us? You know, why would he leave us behind like this?
Yeah.
But it's you can't think that way because that's not what he was thinking.
No, he wasn't. And he might have also, maybe he had the thought that they'd be better off without him. So that's a really common one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tough because I can't imagine what it'd be like to be in that mindset. But I think for men, you know, I guess from the people I've spoken to, I do try and talk about it with other guys. You know, a few times I've rung mates and just gone, hey, you've been a bit off lately. Like, should I be worried? Do you want to grab a beer? Like, what's the go? And they'll go, nah. It's just this thing at work, or I had this argument or whatever. You know, everyone tries to brush it off. But anyone I know who's really struggled with that kind of depression as a bloke, in my experience anyway, a lot of it's come from this feeling of not doing enough for the people around you.
Yeah.
You know, of either not succeeding enough or not being enough of a provider.
Yeah.
You know, I think as men, we have this kind of unspoken burden, especially when you have a family or a partner, that it is up to us to kind of save the day all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that when you feel like you're not living up to that, it's really hard as a guy to swallow that pill because I don't know whether it's a society pressure or it's just something we create out of thin air for ourselves, but there is this
both.
pressure.
Yeah,
I think it's both.
And that ties a lot into the self-esteem, you know, and when a man's self-esteem is low and he doesn't feel like he's doing a good job, it really gets them down.
And I think that's probably where, you know, losing your job or being fired or something happening out of your control, it's really where you start to feel like you're being kicked down.
Yeah.
I know that's normally the scenario. I actually have had mates go, actually, I'm struggling at the moment. And it's never because, you know, of any other reason other than almost feeling challenged, you know, that they're not providing what they feel they should be.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest risk factors actually for men that we look out for. If they've just lost their job or if they've just lost their partner, us as psychologists, we immediately assess for a risk of suicide.
And at what point do you have to put someone in hospital? Like, is there a decision where you've got to go, this is too high risk?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of the time the hospitals are full and they won't be able to keep people for very long, but we do the best that we can giving all the resources available. But yeah, if we have a client and we do an assessment and they're a high risk, we definitely do. We call next of kin and we call, you know, the hospital and to get them checked in.
I had an employee once who threatened to commit suicide over the phone to a family member and they had him committed to hospital. And they called us and basically said, hey, he's not coming into work. And we said, that's fine. And we started doing a plan. And as I guess the group we were at the time, there was 3 or 4 of us in management that were trying to decide what to do. And we said, okay, surely they're not going to release him for a few days. Let's plan for 7 days.
Yeah.
You know, let's just do a 7-day plan. If it gets to then, we'll figure something out. He rang like an hour later and was like, hey, I can come to work tonight. We're like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? You were just taken to hospital.
So they might have not had a bed spare.
Yeah, they just sent him home.
Oh, he's not high risk enough. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's a really um, really vulnerable time for the person. And we always just hope that they've got either a friend or family member that can come in and give some support in that meantime. But you'll have people that can go in and out of hospital during that time a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it happens a lot in prisons and places like that as well, where people are just. I mean, how can you, I guess, keep yourself sane and motivated in a place like that? The weight on you psychologically trying to
Yeah.
deal with something like that.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine. I'm not sure what supports they have in place.
Mm. So,
Probably not much.
to give some light at the end of the tunnel, I'm sure it's a very interesting field based on the fact that a good day's work is helping people,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
rewarding. And
Extremely.
but I could imagine it's also just as tough when you don't or you feel like you don't. Um, but it's that win that keeps you going, right? That pushes you forward.
Yeah. I think like I guess it's a good thing and bad thing, but unfortunately it's hard for us to know if we're not doing a good job
Mm.
because often that's the time where a client they might stop seeing you or you don't hear back from them, right? So or at least I more see the wins. I have clients tell me, I'm in such a better place this year because of you. If I hadn't met you, I don't think I would have been able to do this, and this. So I get a lot of, positive feedback. But I do worry at times the clients that maybe have just dropped off and they said, oh, no, I don't need sessions at the moment. We're never really going to know,
Mm.
you know?
It must be
So
hard to not know as well.
yeah, I always just, I just think, well, I've done what I can and I'm happy that I got a chance to do something
Mm.
and something's always better than nothing. So I think I just keep that mentality to keep me going.
Yeah, it'd be hard to just that not knowing, but I guess in your first few years that probably keeps you up, and then it becomes part of the job. So
Yeah, definitely. You get a lot more comfortable with it as time goes on. But I'm in a position where I'm not seeing really high risk clients at the moment. So I think it does depend what presentations you're working with.
That's true as well. Yeah, because you can probably avoid the ones that trigger you the most as well, right? To say, actually, I don't deal with that kind of client very well,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to treat that type.
Absolutely. And I think you shouldn't. And I think more psychologists could probably do better at saying no to more people because if you're not going to do a good job, I don't think you should do it. Yeah.
We hear constantly about anxiety and depression now, but I wonder if that's because there is a rise in, per capita, per whatever. Statistically, is it going through the roof, or is social media just making it seem that way because so many more people are talking about it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely two sides to it. So I think because of social media, we're a lot more disconnected and disconnection breeds anxiety and depression. So there's definitely, there's more of it. But then on the flip side, there's also a lot more awareness. So there's a lot more people talking about and coming forward. So we don't really know what it was like 40, 50 years ago because people didn't talk about it. So there could have been more people suffering, but silently, like we don't know. And you can't go back and ask them again. And, all the assessment tools and all the knowledge that we have now, we don't know what it was like back then really because we can't go back.
Yeah, it's I try and look at it with empathy, but I wonder if the fact that it's constantly on social media, is that actually making most people's mental health worse because you're giving them this constant feeding them this is you, this could be you?
It's a good question. And I mean, from my personal experience and my opinion, I do think that it's making it worse. The more you hear something, the more you think about it. The more you think about it, the more it exists. So the more you hear about anxiety and depression, yeah, it's going to be, more in your head.
Yeah, I felt, kind of end a bit of COVID, last 12 months of COVID, I'd say. I was watching the news constantly like most people, and it was just constantly making me angry.
Yeah, I don't watch the news.
When I stopped, I was like, great. Now
Yeah.
people say, oh, just here's the news. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to see it. It just made me angry all the time.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the point I see is like, if you constantly see this thing, you're going to be like, that's me, or that's making me feel this way.
Yeah.
Instead of just moving on with your life.
Yeah, you're constantly exposed to it. Yeah. So I haven't really watched the news in quite a few years. I do not watch the news unless it's something like, what happened last night, and I keep up to date with the really important things. But I just noticed that I'm not actively doing anything to change this. And then all that it's doing is like putting me in a negative mindset, which wasn't good for me. So I think a lot of people would probably do better actually not being exposed to the news, just focus on your own life.
Yeah, so speaking of focusing on your own life, we are at the end of a year. This will be our last episode of 25.
Oh, wow.
So I think everybody reflects on their year this
Yeah.
time of year.
Yeah.
And I saw a video the other day of a guy saying it. It was funny he put it this way. He was like, 2025 was really hard and it sucked. Sorry to tell you, next year's probably going to be the same or worse if you don't do anything about it. Like if you just start the new year the same way, like what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think really everyone sets all these New Year's resolutions and these goals that all drop off by February. Every gym's packed in January, like. But I think people need to set smaller goals.
Just one. Just one.
One a year.
Just set one and do it well.
Yeah.
But
Probably good advice.
make it a realistic goal, something that's not too far-fetched, like to completely change who you are, like we were talking about with ADHD. Accept yourself for who you are, focus on your strengths. If there's something that you do really well, do more of it because it's going to succeed.
I'm finishing a book at the moment called The One Thing. I think that's what it's called. It's on audio, so I don't look at it much. But it's the whole idea of the book is like focus on the one thing that'll actually make the biggest improvement. And then once you've mastered that, focus on the next one thing.
Yeah.
But just one thing. That's the point. I think we all overwhelm ourselves with so many goals that we have all the intention to do, but too many balls end up in the air and we don't finish them.
We've only got a certain amount of time and I think.
So for people that want to focus on mental health in their new year, what's your advice to them?
My advice to the people that want to focus on mental health, I think keep it simple. Keep it simple. There is so much information out there. There are so many people online telling you what to do. Keep it simple. Like if something's worked for you in the past, just do it again. If something's not working, stop, and I think it's always an ongoing experiment. I think you're always sort of trialing what's working, what's not working. There's never one size fits all for anything. And whatever's worked for you in the past, it might change and in the future it stops working for you. So it's sort of like an ever-changing, ever-evolving thing. If getting up really early and doing ice baths and going for runs really worked for you in your early 20s, but it's not working for you anymore, change it. Just do something different.
Yeah, you're right. Change, nothing's going to stay the same forever. So you can't apply that to everything.
Yeah, different phases in life, you're going to get more out of different things. So, but I think the biggest thing is just stop listening to all the noise and just really self-reflect, focus on what's working for you and what's not.
Yeah, I think you said before to focus on removing the things that overwhelm you. And I think social media is such a trigger for so many people, yet we still sit there all day on news feeds accepting more of it. I think if you're somebody who's really struggling with being overwhelmed by either world events or whatever's going on in your local area, just get off the apps, go get real help, stop looking at the noise. And I think as well, stop comparing yourself to other people. We live in such a culture of this guy did it faster or better or before me or this girl's looks this way and I want to look that way, but I can't. I've tried this and I've tried that.
Absolutely.
And you've said multiple times, it's accept who you are, accept if there's something you're battling and you've got to deal with. And I think social media almost treats us like we shouldn't accept it because we can strive to be like everyone else.
And there's that constant do better, be better, do this. And it's like, where's the room for just loving yourself as you are and just being the best version of you instead of trying to change yourself? And that comparison piece is a real killer for a lot of people. Like comparison is a thief of joy because anything that you're happy about in your life, if you see somebody else doing, better, you're immediately stripped of that happiness. So, that's where social media can be really, really damaging.
Yeah, well, this is my last piece of advice for the year because I've done it myself recently. But, I certainly got in a mind space of competing with other people that were doing better than me in my mind or had done it younger or faster or sooner. And so I started looking up really, really people I viewed as really successful and that at their age, where if they're 50 or 60 now, that's who I aspire to be at that age. I find people that are where I want to be now, but didn't start till way later than what I am now. And Janine Alice from Boost Juice is one of them, 33 before she started Boost Juice.
Yeah.
She's one of the most successful business people in Australia.
Yeah.
But
amazing.
she started in her backyard in a spare bedroom at 33, having no idea what she was doing.
And I think she had kids at the time, didn't she? Yeah. Amazing.
And it's incredible.
Amazing.
And for me, that's now what inspires me is actually hearing the people that say, you know what? I wasn't that one in a million.
Yeah.
I wasn't a crypto millionaire at 19.
Yeah.
Like actually I was pretty mediocre till 35 or 40 or 50 and that's okay.
And I think those stories are actually probably more common. We just don't hear as
Yeah, of
much
course.
of them
Yeah.
because, you know, we hear about those outliers like, oh, you know, yeah, like crypto
And they're not the
millionaire at
ones on
19.
social media now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Janine is the example, is on social media a bit more than a lot of people, but
Mm.
for most people, their idea of success is everywhere. And there's just as many people who had more struggles than they have than less, but we're fed this news feed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
convincing us otherwise.
Have a social media cleanse. Or you can also do what I do. I have one account that my algorithm, it's all animals. So it's all happy stuff. So I'm swiping
Go
and
and
it's all
cheer
like,
up,
I'm
yeah.
either having a laugh or like watching a guinea pig eat.
I do that on YouTube. My YouTube's like I try and keep it clean, you know,
Yeah,
like none of
yeah.
the depressing stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you so much for coming in today.
No
And
worries. It's
Merry
been-
Christmas. Happy
yeah,
New
Merry
Year.
Christmas.
Hope
Happy
you have
New
a good
Year.
break.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you.